Welcome to Smileys. Today we are going to talk about Forge of Darkness, the first book in the Karkanas series, and we're discussing chapters 1 and 2. So with me today is my co-host Lee. Hey Lee, how are you?
Hello. I'm pretty good. How about you?
I'm fine. So can you tell us exactly what you're going to do today?
So this first episode is going to be chiefly summaries, as we discussed in our prelude/ad video. It is chiefly spoilers for the Malazan Book of the Fallen and for also the Malazan Empire where applicable. We are not doing spoilers for the rest of the Karkanos books. This is mostly going to be summaries, so no too much in-depth discussion. That's for later. If you're interested in proper spoiler discussions, you'll have to wait. In short, this should be shorter than the discussion episode, and if we get too deep into discussion, ideally Maura will stop me. So, without further ado, Maura will hopefully explain the rest.
Yeah, so I think let's just begin. So this is, I think Forge of Darkness is divided into 4 parts of 5 chapters each. And so this is part 1, and the title is In These Gifts, the Shapes of Adoration. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So we'll come to know what gifts they are meaning here and who is adoring whom and all that. So before we begin, I think I'll show the map here of Kural Galain. Karkanas is a city-state which is almost at the center of the map, and there is a river flowing through the whole realm called Dorsan Rill. Right? So along its banks we see all the various holds. Some names are familiar to us: Draconis, Anderist, Purake, Hust, etc. And some are new. I think House Enos and Dreth and all those are new names to us. Right? So moving east, we see some more familiar names, like there is Yedan and Yanis monasteries, though I don't think we're going to visit them in these 2 chapters. And
No.
towards west is, and towards the west is the Barrett Solitude. Yeah. And further west is going to be Jagat, Odan, and Tel Lakai Plateau, and the rest of it. I think this is enough. So shall I just start doing chapter 1?
Sure.
Please stop me. Please interrupt me if I'm getting anything wrong, or if I'm not clear, or if there's any reason. You please feel free to interrupt. Okay. Right. So there will be peace. Now we start at House Dracons or Dracon's Hold, and on top of the lintel stone, these are the words which have been etched in the Azathanai script. There will be peace. It is a statement of conviction, and there's nothing more terrible than conviction, right? And it's commonly believed that the House of Dracons has nobody of Azathanai blood. Yeah, the one with Draconis living in it has nobody of Azathanai blood. And anyway, the Tais don't really interact much with these Azathanai unless, they invite them as stone cutters and masons and, just for work-related things. So when we begin, it's quite early dawn, but the light is muted because we're too close to the heart of Mother Dark's power, right? And through this early dawn muted light, we hear the hoof sounds of war horse Calaris, who is foaming and covered in lather, right? Because Draconis has been riding him hard throughout the night, and he seems to be in some hurry in getting home. Okay, and for once we get a physical description of a character here. So that's Draconis is described as having perfect ticed features with dark, mysterious eyes. Right. So ticed features, I think, pale skin, and I think the main thing we need to note here is just it's pale skin. Throughout, we just keep hearing that ticed is that, right? And usually in his features, we don't see anything of his emotions displayed, except for his portrait, which is now displayed prominently in the citadel at Karkanas, which was painted by Kadaspala of House Enos. And there we are told that he has somehow managed to capture some hidden depths in Draconis. And he looks like a king in all but name. Okay, so as he comes in, at the northwest tower, his 17-year-old bastard son Arathan is watching his father's arrival. Right? And even when Draconis steps into the keep, he tries hard to sense his father's presence, but he can't. He has never been able to sense the power of Draconis. And yeah, we'll discuss that. Yeah, just we'll put a pin on that. And one character quirk we'll mention here is that he keeps biting his nails like a lot, like till it bleeds and stains his clothes and all that. And we have a little bit of backstory that he nearly drowned at age 9, and he has 3 half sisters, our famous Envy, Spite, and there is someone new called Malice. And his father has basically never acknowledged him in all his 17 years of life. Even when he nearly drowned and died, Draconis never really, bothered interacting with him. The only thing he knows about his mother is that he guesses that she must have named him because Draconis has given these kind of names to his half sisters. And he sort of remembers a heavy woman with a brooding face, a strange face, who might have been the mother of these three sisters. But his tutor has told him that no, she was just a wet nurse and she was from the dog runners. Right? I think dog runners, we are quite sort of familiar from the Book of the Fallen. Okay. And there is a saying that seeds spill where they may, but a sire must look into the eyes to make the child his own. And Arathan has never been looked into his eyes by his father, so he remains a bastard. And Arathan also thinks that him and his sisters don't have any typical Taist features. So probably they all, they wonder where is the father, where is the blood of his own father. They don't exactly fit into Taist features. I don't know. That might be important. Okay, and even with all this, young Arathan, he doesn't really resent his father. And Taist society is, after all, a map of talent and capacity, according to his tutor Sagander, right? And he's been teaching him that there is no place for insipid or incompetent people. And this is called as natural justice, which is higher than the justice of Forolkan or Jagat. And even though he's been taught this from his entire life by Sagander, he still has some doubts, Arathan. Okay. So when all this is going on, he hears footsteps and sees that his youngest half sister Malice has come with summons from their father, right? So she grabs him and they start walking towards his father's chambers. And during the walk, he keeps thinking about his tutor's lessons on forbearance, that the weak are living at the mercy of the strong, and they should ever be aware of the privilege of being allowed to live by the strong. And he keeps spiraling into these thoughts, and finally he decides that someday he's going to hurt Draconis badly. Okay, so scene change. Next is Master at Arms Ivis Yerhurst, who's also called Clawface. He has been summoned by Draconis and he's waiting outside the door of the Chamber of Campaigns. Okay. He was interrupted at the smithy where he was instructing the Iron Master Jilal, someone, because Yerhurst has Hurst blood on one side of his family, and so because they have Hurst blood, that means they must have some heightened sensitivity to iron, right? And the smithy has been overworked of late at Draconis Keep. They have been stockpiling weapons for 2 months now. Is that important? Maybe, I don't know.
No.
Right, so Tutor Sagander has been in a meeting inside the Chamber of Campaigns. He leaves and he ushers him inside. And as Sagander leaves, Ivis for a second thinks that, the old tutor suddenly looks even more aged, or maybe it's just too early in the morning for him. So anyway, once again, this room is being used to plan campaigns. Though previously the enemies were foreign, now the campaigns are against domestic enemies, right? And apparently ambition is the enemy here. And Draconis is forging so many weapons and hiring so many house blades and expanding so much militarily that other holds and houses have started taking notice. So there's a brief history about Draconis. About 500 years ago, there was a woman called Sorela, who was the ancestor who raised the house from a lesser house to a greater house. Okay, and she died unexpectedly, like 10 years ago, and her adopted son Draconis has taken over. Okay, and when to mark the ascension from lesser to greater house, she has installed a huge table made from the bole of a 3,000-year-old blackwood tree. Right, that takes center stage in the room. And inside, Draconis asks about Arathan. Ivis reports that the boy has natural skill and has an air of effortlessness in everything he does. He doesn't seem challenged enough. But his one fault is that his hands are still too soft and weak because of all the nail biting. Yes, and Ivis admits that he's frustrated that he can't spend enough time with the boy because he also has to learn with his tutor. So anyway, Draconis gives him instructions that the boy be fitted with armor and helm and given a war horse because they're going to travel west. And he says, even without Ivis prompting him, he says that, yeah, we're going to travel west and I'm going to ride with my son. So next scene change to Malice and Arathan waiting outside the same door after Ivis has left. So Malice calls him Clawface because of all the scars on his face. And Arathan corrects her that those are not scars, those are just, wrinkles because of age and because they all starved during the retreat of the Furulkan Wars. And Malice, being Malice, tells Arathan that Draconis is going to kill him and throw him into the kitchen garbage if he doesn't like him. And Arathan can only respond that names should not be curses. Anyway, this is a big scene of this chapter, my favorite. Arathan enters and Draconis and him have a chat. I think the first thing he says is, "It may be that you will believe that she did not want you." So this is how Draconis starts talking to his son. And he also tells him that, your mother had a difficult choice to make by leaving you. And, maybe someday you will understand and someday you will forgive her. But right now, the time has come to make your life. And Arathan is sure that he's going to get kicked out. But instead, Draconis tells him to take a seat. And then he explains to him his position. Like he says that he can't take him to the citadel because his own position is quite precarious and there is growing tension in the realm. And people look at Draconis as an outsider still. And very interestingly, he says that he can't expect loyalty even from Mother Dark about Arathan's safety. So, and he asks Arathan, "Do you know anything about all this politics?" Arathan replies that, yeah, he only knows that Mother Dark has chosen Draconis as her consort. And what does that mean? He says that, yeah, that just means that she has chosen you to stand by her side, right? And yeah, he says that, yeah, because he has been chosen, he's now between Mother Dark and all the other highborn holds and houses. And that is when we find out that all the other highborns have started calling themselves sons and daughters of darkness. And these are just titles. Nobody is born of blood or related to Mother Dark in any way. And Arathan, at this point, he asks him if he is such a son to Draconis. And Draconis says no, and says that, right now the plan is to briefly leave Mother Dark's side and travel west, and probably to leave him with the Azathanite. It's neither confirmed nor denied. And one more time, Draconis starts with, "It may be that you believe that I do not want you," and the same thing. And finally, it's all decided. Sagander will also join them to continue his education, and they'll be escorted by a few border swords and gate sergeant or someone. So, meeting over, Arathan walks out disappointed in himself. After all, he's the bastard son of an unknown mother, and his father is finally sending him away. Okay, so cut to Sagander, who always hears cracking ice whenever he's unsure of the world. He's the kind of person who can't accept the unknowable, like the feared ration beasts. I still don't know which beast this is, probably bears, I'm not sure. So there are
Well, they don't exist anymore.
Sorry?
They don't exist anymore, so
it doesn't matter. Yeah, they used to be there and they were all hunted into extinction. And just that way, Sagander tries to hunt down every mystery. Like he wants answers. And so now they're going to Azathanai people and they're going to meet the Jagged. They might even see the first Azath house and maybe the empty city of Omtos Falak. Very interesting names are being thrown up, right? So Arathan has finished up his packing. He comes to help his tutor. He tells the old man, "Please leave out all the writing supplies. You don't need to take ink and scrolls and all that. I'm sure people will let you have some." And he tells him that though this is peacetime, it's, sort of a pre-war time. So maybe maps are not really a good gift in this time. So, and finally, Sagander reluctantly agrees and to leave them behind. He tells Arathan to think of gift ideas, especially one of great value for the Lord of Hate. Okay, and in you something? No.
It should be noted that Sagander doesn't reluctantly agree. He berates Arathan for what he says, and then comes up with it on his own. Like, actually, I don't need them. It's fine. You're just dumb. Yeah. Like, okay, we're gonna get to that later, but just keep the little details in mind. Please carry on.
Yeah. So finally, in his inner thoughts, you see that there are some growing signs of strain because the boy is growing up and started to question his tutor, and Sagander can't handle this type of confidence and earnestness and all that. Next, we cut to Gate Sergeant Raskan, who has a habit of walking in such a way that he wears out his shoes. So he's in charge of the border swords who are hired to accompany them in this ride. So there is Rint, Galak, Will, and Ferren. That's just the way I'm going to pronounce them. Please don't correct me. And for some reason, Raskin thinks that he was a nepotism hire, and so who is going to listen to him and all that. And this sort of using influence to get jobs seems to be a trend these days in Kural Gulain. And now, among all these border sports, we get a detailed description of only Ferren, who is told to be slightly older than her brother. She's tall, wiry, she has archer's wrists, she wears a string guard on her left wrist, and she has slightly tilted eyes, walks like a cat, wolf, etc. So all of them are rough and almost half wild. The border swords have no hierarchy or anything, and they're known for being apolitical. They're neutral. So they've been hired to help with the cooking, camping, and all this to accompany them in this journey. And right now they're going to take a far end of the training ground to camp overnight. And this is where Arthan is going to have his horse riding lessons. There is a small discussion where Ferren asks how to treat the Lord's son. And Raskan is clear that he's a bastard and he needs to be treated like any other recruit. Okay, now cutscene. Raskan and Harathan bring a war horse to practice. The training grounds have been chewed up recently because Draconis has cavalry, and these people have been practicing wheel formations recently. And among all the holds, only Draconis has a decently trained, decently prepared cavalry. Raskan thinks of all the imminent unspoken civil war and wonders what is his power that everyone seems to hunger for. To him, true power is just one of life and death. But nobody in the entire realm has the self awareness to say, yes, this is what I want. That whole quote is amazing. Yeah. Do I not deserve it? Have I not earned it? Will I not take it? That quote. Yeah. So anyway, he warns Arathan that what they're riding is a war horse, and it has a high saddle, and a normal broken horse, like a normal horse which is broken, is one in which its fear of people has been replaced by trust, almost blind, idiotic trust. Whereas a war horse is like trained like a partner, and somehow by instinct it can tell who is the enemy during battle. It's either instinct or sort of what the dog runners seem to say, that there are words between souls, and rider and beast have to bond, and that takes time. Okay, so I don't know why it's important, but it's mentioned twice. But Draconis is using mares as war horses, and he tries to have the natural herding of the war horses. He's trying to use that to build his army. Anyway, they work the horse the whole afternoon, and we see the border swords watching and bantering for a bit. As much as Raskan is prejudiced against these savages, he says maybe they have not bathed in years and all that. Those guys don't have a high opinion of the house dwellers either. And there is more themes of collapsing civilization. They talk about how the woods are no longer dense now, and how there are no more bears. Galak even wonders, like, why is everyone so pissed off that Mother Dark has taken a lover? Like, what's the big deal? And he wonders if because Mother Dark has been surrounding herself with so much darkness, he wonders if even Draconis can still see her. And Ferren thinks that Draconis is dragging the boy away in order to punish the mother. Okay, and somehow the talk continues to whether humans are culpable for their actions. Because they understand the consequences of their actions. This is the only thing that sets them apart from other wild beasts. And there's a nice small dialogue where Ferren says, rely not upon conscience, it ever kneels to necessity. And her brother replies that, yeah, necessity is often a lie. So this is something we are very familiar with. Okay, now to wind up this chapter, there is a small geography lesson. The river Dorsan Rill cuts the lands of Dracons by half. To one side is a huge forest, which has been reduced now to 3 woods. And there are some quarry pits which have been abandoned, some pasture land, etc. And over the river, there is a huge Azathanai bridge, right? Even though the river is mostly used as, as a means of transport by tow lines and winches and all that. The Dracon's land, their actual source of wealth is the granite hills inside the lands, like towards the west and north. And one reason for everyone's jealousy towards Draconis, even before he was elevated to consort, was his mysterious ties with the Azathanai. And he is gifted a new grand bridge in Karkanas made by Azathanai. And the thinkers in the court can see the symbolism in this gift, but even then, haters gonna hate. And if there are words carved under the bridge, one cannot see it. I think we're just switching to Galen's voice to end the chapter. Yeah. So unless one took a boat and used a lantern to see underneath, maybe there are words there, and maybe it's just fancy. Because the ones who actually use the river and the boats and all that, they're not mingling with high bonds and poets and artists or anyone. They're the common people. And do these people dream of peace? And do they fear of the time to come as they walk this black river lined with black silt on the shore and all that? And could we ever imagine the blood they would sacrifice in our name? There will be peace. So that was chapter 1. Shall we just move straight to
Perennial
chapter 2?
optimist, Galan is.
Galan? Yeah.
Ever the optimist.
Blind. I think it's called
There will be
Blind Ray of
peace.
Sunshine Galan. Shall we just go to chapter 2, or do you want to discuss this? I think we can do it together
I
at the
think
end.
it would be best if we discuss it a bit now,
Sure,
maybe.
okay. Yeah, sure, yeah.
So, what stood out to you? Yeah.
Yeah, that this land is called Dracones, and the guy is called Draconus. Like, what came first? That's my first doubt.
I'm fairly sure we know the answer. Like, we can make an educated guess to what the answer is. But
I
the
don't
dice
know.
don't know. So it's funny.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one, obviously there will be peace. I don't know, it could be seen either way, right? It's either just declaring that there will be peace someday, hopefully, or it could also be a sort of imperative. There will be peace. There is going to be peace, whether we like it or not. It could be
think-
read both ways. And
Yeah, since it's carved on Dracon's hold, I think it's definitely the latter. It's Draconus declaring that there will be peace by his hand or otherwise.
okay,
And the guy is gearing up for war, right?
he is. Yeah,
He's building up a big army. He's training them in tactics that he knows will be effective against the Dice. He's not even bothering with the diplomatic route. It's like, okay, whatever. I banged this chick. I'm her consort. Deal with it. And I'm also going to build a bigger army to deal with you. So, what are you going to do about it? He says that the diplomatic route has failed, but I don't even think he bothered to try. But
Yeah.
beyond Draconus and his potential failings, I think one of the excellent parts about this chapter is how much it highlights how dicks the Dice are. From Sagander to Raskin, Prejudice to the Border Swords. It's very, like, understated, because a lot of our POVs are these people that think, this is natural justice. This is how things are. We don't really have an external POV through which to view them. And Galan is kind of our external POV, but he doesn't also care. He's like, whatever, look at these idiots. And it is through Arathan that we explored some of this, through Sagander. And it is Arathan's doubts that will eventually become our doubts. But these people, the Dice, don't care. They hunted down beasts to extinction. They are prejudiced against the border swords that guard their borders. They fought wars against at least the Forligan that we know of already. And more to come in the next chapter. Are we supposed to be rooting for these people? Like, what's up? What the hell? But also the obviously tragic irony of, Draconus being diced and no one knowing it, except not even just sons
God.
and daughters know that he actually is Ethane. And Galan is definitely rubbing it in your face a little bit, like, I know you know, but they don't know. So relish it.
Yeah, like he has like perfect Dice features. That's such a I was thinking about how Erikson told us that you treat this book as a traditional fantasy. It's because in so many ways it is like that. So it's very nice that we start off with a sort of protagonist with Arathan, who is unwanted, and we have some inkling of his powers here, right? Because he doesn't sense his father. He thinks that is a failing on his part, but an equally viable alternative is that he's equally powerful, and so that's why he's not able to sense or be threatened by Draconus's power in any way. And and second thing is, so he's this sort of a protagonist being set up, and we are seeing the civilization, like the whole Karkanas and the Holds and all these people. And we have a Barrett solitude on one side, which is, filled with. On the other side, we have, I don't know, pseudo elves. Would you call them as elf stand-ins who come occasionally bearing gifts of stone and stuff? So it
Is
does
that
feel
really?
traditional. Yeah. How else would you see them in a traditional fantasy?
I don't think they're pseudo. No. I don't know.
They're these magical creatures,
If
mysterious,
the
who
the
come
pseudo elves would be the
occasionally.
Deist, no?
No, that is for the rest of the Malazan world. But here, if you see Taist as a predominant humans, like the human stand-ins, wouldn't you make Azathanai the elf stand-ins here?
I
I don't.
guess. I don't know. I didn't think of that.
Yeah, no, because you just assume that these are the baseline, right? Like Taist are the baseline here. So what else is left? We have wild people at the borders, and we have magical people on one side, and more magical people as you go further. So it was a nice setup, as traditional as can be, except for all the thoughts about what do you call humans are culpable for their consequences and things like that. Yeah, except for all those
None of that in
internal
original
thoughts.
planet. No. We're not culpable here. We're just yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Is that
I think we
anything
best
more you
keep the
want to
rest
bring
for
up?
the actual discussion. Yeah, I think we'll best keep that for the rest of the episode.
Sure.
So
Okay. Yeah.
I guess we ought to
Chapter
get
two?
chapter 2 now. Yeah.
Yes.
So the first scene begins, and we are in Neretsor, home to vaunted hero of the Teist, Vathar Sander, and his son, Asurk. Heard that one before. Our perspective is framed by Hundral, a noble-born officer in the Kuril Legions, which is now called Hero Sander's Legion, observing Karas Palayanus, who we mentioned before, having painted Draconis, painting the portrait of Hero Sander. The tension is actually palpable. Hero Sander isn't an overtly patient man, and Kadaspal is an expressive artist when it comes to the subjects. In the meantime, Galan Thural is taking the time to fill us into the details about what happened. The Forlorn War was mentioned earlier from Ivis, and here Ral mentions it again, that Eurosander was one of the middling low soldiers that rose to the ranks during the Forlorn War, because apparently not just they lost and had to retreat while starving, they also had betrayal and double crossing and the like in the ranks. Fun. Eurosander now commands not only the Neretsor, but the entire Kuril Legions, which are now, as aforementioned, called Eurosander's Legion. However, the facade Gadaspala is now painting of a vaunted general / hero in ornate regalia and whatnot is, to put it bluntly, bull. It's not representative whatsoever of Eurosander as a person, because in his normal regalia, he is completely indistinguishable from any ordinary soldier. He is a soldier. And the subject of the painting is close to losing his patience, and knowing that the Cirque will not actually step in, Hunral likes to take the bullet instead, which he has allegedly done before. A bit, not a bullet, but you get the idea. And he puts an end to tonight's portrait creating session, much to Gadaspala's dismay, but also much to everyone else's relief. The tension is diffused, and Ral once again reminisces about the past. How Eurosander was a lowborn. He didn't have any noble blood, unlike him, by the way. Put a pin on that. And he was brought to the fore both by his martial prowess and the lies / half-truths / propaganda propagated by Ral himself in order to prop up and elevate Eurosander's status. He has ambitions, but Eurosander doesn't seem to nor share his methods or his ideals. He's much more interested in other things, which we'll get to soon. So, in order to get to Eurosander, Ral has to go through his son. And we kind of have an idea of what to expect from a Cirque from the Book of the Fallen. He's a bit of a
He's,
malleable, a bit of a he's certainly special. We do learn that Urisander has a quote-unquote abiding fascination with Fork and Justice. Excellent start. Which does not bode very well with what we know of them. However, Corel Galeen is indeed a realm in dire need of reform, which we already saw. And Urisander has taken upon himself to find the best way to bring about said reforms. Osiric, not least because of Ral's prodding, doesn't seem to share his father's sentiment. It's not the realm that's wrong, it's a single person in said realm, which is Draconis. How convenient. There's also something poetic, hypocritical, about Hunral's admission that Urisander did as he did not for the good of the realm, but for himself and for his son, while he, in turn, tries and seeks to install Urisander as Mother Dark's husband, not consort, but husband, for the good of the realm. Did I mention that Hunral is nobleborn? Because he's nobleborn of the Isgin line, which we know from the Book of the Fallen as well. And he allegedly has one of the more legitimate claims to the Blackwood throne. But he would say that, wouldn't he? So, we're about 3 pages into the chapter, and not unlike Sagander, Ral is a hypocrite, a walking contradiction, and a drunk. Sick. The scene changes. We're still in Eretzor, but now we are in the POV of Karaspala, who is reminiscing about the ages past. He has some very interesting ideas, quite unlike Sagander, and his rant about natural justice and how the weak should fear the strong. He rejects notions of servitude and betters and status and notions and all of that. He considers every life to be equally valuable, regardless of its status and station. His reputation for being difficult to work with stems from a dark, foul mood, allegedly, that takes him when he paints. What fascinates me about Karaspala is, in spite of his admission and assertion that all lives are equally valuable and whatnot, he admittedly despises everyone he knows, with very few exceptions. One of them being his sister Anestia, whom he wants to paint. Paint. I said paint.
Yeah, we heard. Yeah.
So yeah. To Karaspala, Anestia represents. Oh, this is gonna get awkward. Anestia represents utmost perfection in form. She's depthless, beautiful, and multi-layered, and his sister. I will insist on this. But Anestia is a form against which... Yes? Yeah, go.
Can I correct you that he doesn't want to paint her? Like, he decides that he can't paint her, isn't it?
Yeah. True enough.
Yeah. Yeah, please go on. Please go on. Yeah.
I'm not going to say anything more on the allegories about painting and the other word which I wanted to use, because this is going to get very awkward. We'll save that for later. So, Ernestia's form of, beauty and depthlessness contrasts very starkly to Karaspala's mind against Urisander, who is bland. He's monotonic. He's monochrome. He's very static. He's shallow. And those qualities make him a very good leader, both militarily and politically, but they don't make him for an exciting art subject. What is further interesting about Karaspala's philosophy is that the very fact that he paints stands in contrast to what he's trying to achieve. Because painting portraits, especially in a place like the Hall of Portraits in Corcanas, essentially exudes the past, an imagined past, a created, a fabricated past, which never came to be. He is the weapon of tradition. He's upholding the status quo, which he's actively trying to destroy.
Yeah.
if you get past all the ancestral thoughts and like the borderline sociopathic tendencies, Cadispalas is a really nice character. In the meantime, he's about to enter another dreadful dinner with Yurasander and Osirk and Ral, while Ral gets hopelessly drunk again, reciting war stories and possibly, maybe more than a little, singing Yurasander's praise. Yurasander, in the meanwhile, goes off about his arcane discoveries in what Cadaspala calls foreorgan idiocy, I think, something like that.
Okay.
While Osirk blandly takes on everything, uncritically, because woe to us if Osirk actually thought for himself for once. He dreads the thought that he may be asked to paint Osirk because he wants to go home and see his sister. And also, Osirk is more bland than a wall of paint. However, this has not come to pass. He is alone with Yurasander. Takes a seat, and Yurasander pulls out his finest wine, black wine. Ral is notorious for drinking everything in sight, including Cadaspala's, presumably, cleaning spirits, which, by the way, are incredibly high-proof alcohol, and you get the point.
Yeah.
And yeah, Vata did not particularly fancy sharing his finest, best wine with a guy that guzzles it down like no tomorrow. So, the two men, Vata Yurasander and Cadaspala, end up having a very long-winded, very interesting discussion, which we'll discuss further later, about art, about justice, about oppression. And while it is very interesting to read, it's a bit difficult to summarize without sounding boring, so I'll try my best. So, Yurasander essentially asks him if he's curious to his opinion. And Cadaspala goes off on a bit of a tangent saying, no, I'm not actually curious, I don't care. I only value opinions that actually interest me or flatter me. And Yurasander then asks him if he rejects the value of constructive criticism. And so Cadaspala takes him on and says, okay, well, what about your findings in justice? And he says, like, are you evading my question? No, I'm just asking, I'm taking a different route to answering it. And so Yurasander proceeds to lay out his findings and his dilemma, which is very interesting. I'll preface this. It's really, go back and read it, seriously. Laws are by nature good, but the problem with law is even the most belligerent, smartest, most intelligent, most capable lawmaker cannot possibly make laws for every edge case. That's why we have a jury. That's why we have judges. That's why we don't have like an endless book of, because it's plainly impossible, and Yurasander knows this. The problem is that in leaving room for interpretation, you leave room for human nature and all sorts of, well, not human in this case, biased, but you get the point, for people to meddle with stuff. And said meddling often comes about from people in power. And those people in power very rarely mean well. So while law in and of itself is pure and unsullied, its interpretation can be faulty, flawed, and then lead to further problems which are not alleviated by law. What he calls an issue of moral stance. Cadaspala disagrees and says that laws and prohibitions and the like are inherently created by people in power in order to subjugate others and oppress others. Because law is essentially nothing but formalized opinions. And there is nothing peaceful, as Yurasander proposes, about law. Because everything is set out to set forth certain behaviors, certain accepted or not behaviors, and then force said behaviors on people. Yurasander concedes the point, because it's actually a fairly good point, and continues that law exists to impose acceptable behavior in social discourse, and to protect one from spiritual and physical harm. And in so doing, he argues himself into a corner, because What if someone breaks the law? What do we do then? You see the dilemma, right? If laws are meant to protect someone from physical and spiritual harm, how do we punish them adequately for breaking said law? And how do we ensure that said law is then put into effect adequately? How do we ensure that people follow the law? And he doesn't have an answer to that. That's why we're here. And then Kataspala continues with his train of thought that all laws are by nature oppressive, that the only thing that differentiates between one law from the other is what the ruling class, the people in power at any given time, deem acceptable, which reminisces an old quote from Toll the Hounds about acceptable levels of misery and suffering, and something civilization. The talk about law concludes, and Kataspala changes that into art, which he follows a very similar reasoning. Critics are like lawmakers. They are by nature oppressors. They dictate what can and cannot be considered aesthetically pleasing and/or good. And critics seek to undermine those that value something for aesthetic purposes by putting forth prohibitions on what can be considered good. And if those people don't wish to expound upon why they consider that good, because in matters of taste, right? Well, their opinions are discounted. And if they do seek to expound why they think something is good, they get ganged up upon and annihilated. Which is okay, but maybe a bit of an over-exaggeration and maybe a bit of Steve talking. But, the point is there. He makes a pretty good point. And so he says that I don't much care for critics. Critics are only there to sate my curiosity. I am only curious about the opinion of critics. Instead, with regards to people like Sander, who are only interested and have no further agenda beyond the aesthetic, he's interested in their opinions. And so, Kataspala, having essentially out-argued and possibly given Sander further understanding of his dilemma, the two of them speak long into the night. And the scene ends with Kataspala inquiring about what Sander's opinion on his art is, and he essentially goes, I had no idea I was so transparent. Mind you, 2 pages before that, Kataspala had just said how bland and monochrome Sander was, so yeah.
Just one thing, when Kataspala says that you're switching the scene now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so when Kataspala says that he's not curious, he's curious only about critics and nothing to do with the audience, right? He doesn't really say anything about favorable or unfavorable and all. He just mentions that he doesn't care about the audience. The audience opinion is irrelevant and it's only the critics which is going to pay attention. I think that's sort of what he tells Sander before the whole dialogue starts. Yeah, it was very interesting though. Yeah, as you said, it should be read. Go on, please.
So the scene changes. Yeah, the scene changes. We're now in House Ennis with the daughter of Lord Jane Ennis and Kataspala's sister Anestia. She's trying on dresses in the grand rehearsal for her wedding, and she has summoned forth Krill Durav, who is a 19-year-old hostage with excessive hormones. He has grown up alongside Anestia, and as such, the two of them share a very intimate relationship, which neither of them can particularly make sense of. Anestia kind of treats him like a pet, and kind of treats him like a friend, and not exactly how Krill would want, and then Krill is a bit hurt and then leaves. It's all a bit, iffy because Anestia is about to be wed, and as aforementioned, Krill has hormones.
To be fair, Anestia too. Isn't that why she's treating him that way?
Yeah.
Yeah, go on.
But they also have, tradition to uphold and shit. Which we'll get to that too. So, as I mentioned that, Krill then goes on to think about the nature of his position and why he's here. He thinks about the tradition of hostages and how it is a time-honored tradition, Krill Galling. It's been here for a while. It has strict rules and prohibitions and strictures and law that bind it. But also, it's, in a very odd way, it's almost barbaric, right? Because he has spent most of his adult life, most of his life, period, in House Ennis for like the past 11 years of his 19-year-old life. And he has to leave at 20. And so he has to go back to a family that has grown up around him. And so in a year from now, and so in a year from now, Krill will not have a home. He will have nowhere he belongs because tradition, because someone dictated that they should be allies, so they should change hostages without ever asking the kid who was like 8.
Is that such a bad thing, do you think? I'm not going to tell you, and Galan isn't going to tell you. So. Yeah.
And as aforementioned, Krill has hormones.
Oh my god, yeah.
He goes on to find Jane in the Great Hall of the house, and they do have a chat. We learn that Galan can actually speak Azathanai, and he has since taken a vow not to share his knowledge of Azathanai with anyone. You may recall that the first lines in Chapter 1 that Mora mentioned were "There will be peace," written in Azathanai. Galan's a dick, and Jane pointed out that we cannot trust poets in such matters.
Yeah.
Krill then requests permission to head out to the hills and seek the Akala. Jane then points out that the Akala are dead for decades. And then it dawns on him that, oh, my daughter's about to be wed. And he spent like all of his life with her. Jane is a surprisingly good dad. He's a very good father figure in Justice Scene to both, because on the one hand, he wants what's best for Anestia, right? He inquires to Krill, who is like the closest person he knows to Anestia, do you think he loves Underist? She loves Underist. Do you think she'll be happy with him? Is this just another traditionally bound marriage? But also, please don't forget us. Don't turn away. I don't want to lose another son, right? Because, sure, he has Kadaspala. Let's be honest here, Kadaspala is a bit weird. And soon... Yes, go on.
Oh, no, I just wanted to interrupt you because you said Jane is a good father figure and he, asks Krill his opinion about whether Anestia is happy about the marriage and all that. To me, it felt as if he knows that Krill has feelings for Anestia and he is getting it, putting words in his mouth, making him confirm that yes, this marriage is a happy and it's going to happen. Like, he just wants to make sure that Krill is not going to like disrupt the wedding or something, or, run away with Anestia or anything. That's the vibe I got it.
Yeah. No, I don't think so, because I'll tell you why. Because he brings up to Krill that the Akala are dead. Right?
Yeah.
There's no more in the hills. And then they have the chat where Jane, it's something like slowly dawns on him like what Krill means. Like, do you think my daughter loves her? Loves him?
Yeah.
Will you return? Like, I hope I'm not going to lose you forever. And then he goes...
No. Go back. Not will you return. He says, I'm happy to hear that she loves Anderist, and I'm happy to hear you say that. I thought that was significant.
Yeah, because he cares for Anestia. Because Krill is the closest person to Anestia that there has been.
I mean, he's a dad. He obviously knows that Krill is in love with her, and it's sort of different getting to hear these words from him, knowing that he's not going to act on those feelings. That's the vibe I got. Yeah.
I think he seeks reassurance. I think both of them seek reassurance because the future is very uncertain. Hence the quote about the Akala, right? Because both of them seek a past which was more certain. Krill goes on to find an extinct race of beasts.
It was...
that hasn't been there for decades. Jane is about to lose both of his children, right? One, someone who's been wedded, and the other because of tradition. I don't think he's being cruel to him to say, "Oh, I want you to swear that you're not gonna take my daughter away," because
No. I don't think it was
I
cruelty.
think Jane
but
would be happier if they were together. Because he knows Krill loves Anestia, and he knows Anestia loves Krill. He cannot be sure if Andorus loves Anestia, and the other way around. So I think they would be he would be happier if they were together. That's my reading.
No, maybe, but I don't know.
I did read the chat like 3 times though. So
No, but that is not an argument, Lee.
I'm just saying. Anyway.
Do you want to spend more time on this? I'm happy to.
We have quite a bit of time to waste before then, so let's there's a few more scenes more to go, and they're quite important. So next scene is with Mora's favorite, Hishtula. Okay, I'm putting words in Mora's mouth. I'm putting words in Mora's mouth right now, but Hish is a very interesting character. So the scene starts, and it's Hishtula reminiscing about a rose. She's reminiscing about her love life, her actual life, her lived life, how many suitors she's changed, how many people have broken her heart. And all the while, she's getting drenched because she's riding the Garganas and it's pouring, and the only thing she has time for is, I've been hurt a lot in my life. Getting drenched all the meanwhile. And so she takes refuge somewhere in pure cold. The rose, which she has been thinking about, has accompanied all her life, and by now, since she's the mistress of her hold, and can probably not take any more suitors for political reasons, it is almost dead. It has withered, so it serves as a poignant reminder of her own love life. And because we're in pure cold, who else are we going to find but the 3 pure brothers? Andorus, Silgasramin, and Anomander. The 3 sons of Anomander Purake, and now the 3 sons of Mother Dark, which are apparently not actually sons of Mother Dark. Who knew? It's interesting to note that Hish has been together with both Silkas and Anomander, and so considers
not
the courtesy to which. Not at the same.
Sorry.
Oh God,
sorry.
no.
Sorry.
Well, we'll get to that too because the brothers have a scene about that later. It's interesting because Hish considers the courtesy which they extend to her as pity, which it could be if you want to be very not generous towards Anomander and the boys. But they could also just be, if they're just being courteous because they loved her, but Hish doesn't view it that way because she's hurt, right? And then she thinks about them, and Silkas was one of her later loves. A few years ago, they were together for a few months. He just kind of up and left for reasons undisclosed. Anomander was her first love, and what's interesting is how she reminisces about him. Like, oh yeah, we were together, and why did he leave? Oh yeah, he went to war. And that's brought up completely casually, a page and a half in.
Yeah.
What the fuck? Okay, I just turned completely red. Okay. I think I just moved so much my lens got confused. Sorry.
Yeah, you're just excited about Hish thinking about war. Yeah.
Yeah, Anomander went to war, and that's why they broke up. And Hish doesn't think that's important enough to bring up because it's not of the point. It's not relevant right now. The 3 brothers are before the gravestone of their father, Anomander, who has had a phrase inscribed in Azathani in the inside of his gravestone, facing towards him, facing towards darkness, in honor of the woman he has spent his life serving, that is Mother Dark. So, Silgas seeks to get the gravestone away, because they kind of need to know, what were their father's words, because this is a time of uncertainty. There are talks of civil war. These three are the chosen warriors of Mother Dark. If nothing else, they need the guidance of their father more than ever. Andres disagrees because, for one, he's about to be wedded, and that's a bad omen, and two, it's just not a very nice thing to do. If these words were for them, they would be written in Taist, but they're not. They're written in Zathanai, which none of them can speak. And yeah, if they opened it up, they would understand a few words here and there, or maybe a few symbols here, which they could then trace back to other houses and whatnot, but it wouldn't make any sense to them, so it's completely pointless and disrespectful to boot. Hish comes along, and as is a bit traditional for her, she takes a very neutral stance on matters. She just says, it's a bad omen, and opening up the grave, you won't find anything except for the smell of a dead man, smelling of guilt, and stuff like that. And then she reminisces that as she walks away, the three brothers will laugh behind her back in pity or chagrin or something like that. And then Selgash will rip open the gravestone, Andres will get pissed at him, and then they'll go forth. And then the scene changes to the three brothers, and they, Anamander and Andres have a back and forth. Anamander and Selgash, my bad, have a back and forth, in which Anamander says something along the lines of, "My heart swells at the sight of her," and then Selgash responds, "Just your heart, then, brother." And yeah, we can kind of tell that Hish's assessment of these two brothers is a bit wrong and a bit driven by her own self-pity. But also, these two, at least these two, maybe Andres, kinda, sorta, have ulterior motives. Because, yeah, they banter a bit back and forth. They eventually conclude that it would indeed be bad to break open this gravestone, because Andres is going to get wedded, and as aforementioned, they can't read the damn thing. But they also take the time to consider potentially if Hishtula would be a good ally in the up-and-coming civil war. Again, this notion of things being important in the mundane taking a back seat, war, taking a back seat to the Rose allegory, and here their love for Hish being put on the forefront compared to how useful she might be in an up-and-coming civil war, which might pose risk to their houses. And then they ran away to Andres' new home, which is being sanctified, and had a hearthstone being built by a high mason of the Zathanai, who is apparently damned expensive. The three brothers have a fairly heartfelt moment, which is quite the treat, because we don't see that in the Book of the Fallen pretty much ever. Whenever they're together, they're either plotting or grieving. Or being mad. Here, they're just actually being nice to one another for a change. And then the scene cuts again to Andres' home, through Sparrow's eyes. Sparrow being Andres' Taist Mason, who is now watching the Azathanai High Mason awaken sorcery to bring in the hearthstone of the home, upon which he will go forth and describe the necessary words. Now, overall, this following scene is quite mundane. It's just some big dude, bringing in a stone, and then the three brothers swear upon it. And some fucking how, Stephen Erikson makes it one of the most tense scenes I've read in a while. And I have no fucking clue how he does it.
yeah.
I don't know. So, They enter, and the High Mason essentially demands that the recipient of this gift, rather the giver, the commissioner of this gift, who has already paid quite a bit in coin because, as aforementioned, the High Mason's quite expensive, and for the procurement of the stone, people died. That happened. Has to then swear by blood and by vow upon the Hearthstone to wish well upon the new couple. Anomander does not take well to this because Anomander is a bit of an obstinate dipshit in this book. And while eventually he relents because he does love Anderist and he does want to help his brother, and he did pay quite a bit for this, he then goes on to demand a vow in return from the Azathanai. Now, Anderist doesn't want him to do this because both he and the Azathanai know that Anomander is speaking from wounded pride, because Anomander is prideful, and he would do that.
Not just wounded pride. He's again looking for allies.
He does say he doesn't want bloodshed, no?
But then they don't know the nature of their alliance.
Oh, he doesn't know, but exactly, that's the point. Like, he's
I think he was
meddling
being
in
strategic,
things.
not just pride. Yeah, okay.
I think he could have gone about it better if the Major was strategic. I think it just hurt.
No, because he waits till the war is done and everything, and after the Hearthstone is set, only then does he start demanding a return war and all that. So I thought it was very calculated of him. It was because if it was pride, it would be like, here I'm spilling my blood, why don't you spill your blood? It was not like that. He waited till the work was done and then demanded in return. I thought he was being a tactician for the war.
I think you're being more generous than neither I nor Galan are willing to be.
Do not include yourself
maybe
with Galan because, yeah, we are reading the same words. Okay.
But yeah, and Amanda demands a blood vow. The Azathanai basically tells him that I have no clue what will happen if we do this. This is stupid. Don't try it. And then Amanda persists, and like, okay, well, you want to be like that? Fine. But I did warn you. And then Amanda essentially inquires as to what the consequences will be. Like, I don't know. We've not done this before. This isn't my place of expertise. I don't care. I'm just a Mason. And then Anomander inquires, like, no bloodshed in my name? No, we'll see. No, really, don't know. No, we'll see. And then he gives his name as Kaladin Brood. And now we know that, for one, Kaladin's Azathanai, that's neat, and how these two met, and why they've been together for so long, because Anomander literally forced a blood vow from him. So they're bound together by blood. Which is oddly sweet, in a way.
It is, yeah. It's, I don't know, that whole tense scene with just the words Kaladin Brood. Oh god, that was such a huge relief, because I was thinking, what's going to happen now? Who is going to start dying here or what? That was an excellent scene. What stood out to you in your chapter 2?
I mean, all of your Sanders' conversation with Kataspalo, because obviously, and then this aforementioned scene, which is written to stand out, but as I said, it's like very mundane in the grand scheme of things, because it's just a guy commissioning a stone to put in his home, and Steve somehow manages to make it incredibly tense and interesting.
Yeah.
But your Sanders is going to be, yeah, sure.
Oh, sorry, about these Purek brothers, because we have a common friend who keeps coming on the show and telling us wrong things. We should tell Nif. Yeah, so Silkus is an albino even here.
Yeah.
So he starts out as an albino. That's all I wanted to clarify. Please go on.
Yeah, your Sanders is going to be one of those characters I'm keeping an extra eye on this raid, because you can probably guess his identity from him being Ashurk's dad. So he's probably quite important, maybe, probably, possibly. I'm sure he'll be fine. But yeah. We'll say this for now.
Isn't that a good parallel, right, between these two young sons, Arathan and Osirk, with their superpowered dads who are sort of indifferent, and their, I don't know, highly opinionated mentors in the form of Sagander and Hanral. It's a nice parallel between the two. So, right, but one is sitting in Erikson and the other is going to start riding west. Who knows
Yep.
what's going to happen? Do you have anything more
We do.
here?
But we're not telling. I don't believe so.
Shall we wind up then?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So, if you stick around, I think you'll get to. I think the next episode is going to be about the spoilers all discussion. So, we'll see you there. If not, next week we'll have chapters 3 and 4. Right? So, a lot more fun setup. So, yeah, there is more setup. So,
oh, yeah.
Let's see.
This entire book is set up. But we'll get to that.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Thank you for listening. Thanks, Lee. Thanks for your time. Bye.
You, Maura. Bye.